General Sir Charles Harington Harington, GCB, DSO was a British Army officer most noted for his service during the First World War and Chanak crisis. During his 46 years in the Army, Harington served in the Second Boer War, held various staff positions during the First World War, served as Deputy Chief of the Imperial General Staff between 1918 and 1920, commanded the occupation forces in the Black Sea in Turkey, and ultimately became Governor of Gibraltar in 1933. Respected by his peers and remembered as an outstanding soldier, Harington served the entirety of the First World War in a staff capacity, most notably as Chief of Staff to General Herbert Plumer, commander of the Second Army, with whom he had a strong mutual understanding. As Commander-in-Chief of the Allied Occupation Army, based in Constantinople, Harington was instrumental in averting a war between the United Kingdom and pre-Republic Turkey. Harington retired in 1938, having been Governor of Gibraltar since May 1933. His continued association with the British Army in retirement was facilitated by symbolic positions, such as Honorary Colonel of the Regular King's Regiment, its territorial 7th Battalion, and the 415th Punjab Regiment. Early life. He was born in Chichester, the son of Emmanuel Thomas Poe and Isabella Jane, and christened Charles Harington. Of Anglo-Irish heritage, Harington gained his unusual name repetition as a 4-year-old infant, when his father replaced the family's original surname of Poe with the maiden name of Charles's grandmother. His nickname of Tim, by which he was almost universally known, was acquired while on his inaugural deployment abroad. Fellow officers from his battalion assigned Harington this nickname while en route to Aden after learning of the conviction of Timothy Charles Harington, an Irish nationalist and Member of Parliament. Educated privately and at Gresson's School in Worthing, Harington continued his studies at Cheltenham College. An interest in sports, particularly cricket and swimming, developed during his school years. He was admitted into Sandhurst in 1890 and after graduation 2 years later was commissioned as a second lieutenant into the 2nd Battalion E, King's Liverpool Regiment. He became its adjutant in 1897 and served in the Second Boer War, seconded as a railway staff officer. Decorated with the Distinguished Service Order, Harington was characterized in a dispatch as being an officer of first-rate ability, business capacity and tact. In 1904, at Limerick Cathedral, Harington married Gladys Grattan, the daughter of Brigadier General O'Donnell Colley Grattan. Recalled as adjutant of the 4th King's Regiment, Harington served with the battalion in Ireland for about a year under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Grattan. He was reassigned, with Colonel Grattan, to the 13th Provisional Battalion after the disbandment of the 4th and later rejoined the 2nd Kings at the Curragh. Harington returned to Sandhurst as commanding officer of Gentlemen Cadets in 1903. The appointment lasted almost 4 years and entailed him being responsible for the instruction of officer cadets. He was selected for employment at Staff College, Camberley in 1906, a decision that had neither been anticipated or sought, and later moved to the War Office and Army Headquarters. Harington transferred to Aldershot in 1911 to assume the position of Brigade Major to the 6th Brigade, which consisted of the 1st Kings and 5 other battalions. When his appointment expired in 1913, Harington joined the 1st Kings in command of a company until just before the First World War. First World War. War was declared by Britain on the 4th of August 1914 after the invasion of Belgium by the German Empire, which, with Austria-Hungary, was in conflict with France, Russia and Serbia. Harington had been attached to the mobilization branch of the War Office since July and supported its efforts in the initial stages of preparations, to such an extent that he recalled 10 days had elapsed before he ventured outside. He witnessed the departure of his regiment, the 1st Kings, from Talavera Barracks on the 12th. In his foreword to Everard Wirrell's History of the King's Regiment 1914-19, Harington recalled his inspection of the battalion 5 years later, in Cologne, Germany. Of the 1,000 officers, non-commissioned officers and men I had seen start out from Aldershot in August 1914 on that journey, not a single officer and barely a handful of non-commissioned officers and men remained, and yet the battalion had won through. There were the colours before me with the pre-war honours on them. How many new ones had they earned? My heart was too full to say much to the battalion. My greatest friends, my brother officers, all my old company except 1 or 2, had gone. The majority had made the supreme sacrifice. The British Expeditionary Force began to reorganize immediately after the Battle of Mons and subsequent retreat to the Marne. Harington became General Staff Officer, grade 2nd in 3rd Corps, formed under Lieutenant General William Pulteney with the intention of grouping together the 4th and 6th Infantry Divisions. 2 months after promotion to Brevet Lieutenant Colonel, Harington joined the 49th Division as GSO-1 in April 1915. While positioned in the Ypres salient, the 49th's commanding officer, Major General Baldock, was seriously wounded and replaced by Major General Perceval. His later incapacitation by influenza burdened Harington, one of the few regulars in the division, with most of Perceval's responsibilities. Months later, Harington learned that Perceval's absence had necessitated his retention, precluding his dispatchment to Saloniki to serve with 12th Corps, expecting to assume command of a brigade in the 14th Division after 5 days of leave in September. Having been informed of such a prospect by General Plumer, Harington was notified on his return that he was instead being transferred to the Canadian Corps as Brigadier General, General Staff. The Canadian Corps he had constituted in September after the arrival of a 2nd Division, when initially formed under the command of Lieutenant General Edwin Alderson. The Corps lacked a general staff and consisted of a single infantry division and cavalry brigade. Alderson was succeeded to command in May 1916 by General Julian Byng, who presided over his first battle as Corps commander just weeks after his appointment. Allocated positions in the Ypres salient, in the proximity of Hooge Hill 60 and Zwartleen. The Canadian Corps had been instructed by Byng to begin preparations for a localized attack, not anticipating the possibility of one being conducted by the German 13th Corps against the tactically important vantages Mount Sorel and Tortop. The German bombardment intensified on the morning of the 2nd of June, coinciding with a reconnoitering visit to the Canadian front line by Major General Malcolm Mercer and Brigadier General Williams, respective commanders of the 3rd Division and 8th Brigade. Both were among 8,430 officers and other ranks who became casualties during the battle. Mercer was killed by shellfire and Williams severely wounded and taken prisoner. 4 mines opposite Mount Sorel were detonated at about 1 p.m. as an immediate prelude to an assault by 6 infantry battalions which displaced the remnants of the 1st and 4th Mounted Rifles, and Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry from their devastated trenches. The 1st Canadian counterattack, executed on the 3rd, was defeated insufficiently organized and coordinated, resulting in heavy casualties and the removal of numerous officers. Byng was informed during the battle that Harington had been chosen to become a Major General, General Staff, in effect Chief of Staff to General Plumer at 2nd Army Headquarters. Plumer personally visited Harington following the announcement, quipping, "I won't have you at all unless you get Mount Sorrel back." The recapture of the lost territory before the commencement of the Somme offensive became a priority for the Canadian Corps. Preparations for the second counter-attack, described by Harington as being very careful, were meticulous and complete by the 11th. Later life, his tenure as Deputy Chief of the Imperial General Staff, subordinate to Field Marshal Sir Henry Wilson, encompassed conflict in Ireland and civil unrest in India, punctuated by the massacre of Indian demonstrators at Amritsar by troops under the command of Brigadier General Reginald Dyer. Supporters of Dyer, mostly imperialist conservative diehards, army officers, and Ulster Unionists, opposed any form of disciplinary action being taken against the brigadier, whom they considered a defender of the British Empire. Dyer continued to receive support from the highest echelons of the army, most prominently Wilson, Harington, and the Army Council. According to Nigel Collett in his book Butcher of Amritsar, Harington's schedule afforded him limited opportunity to comprehensively study Dyer's statement detailing his account, while he did not appear to have read any other document on the case. Harington's own judgment conflicted with that of the government and corresponded more closely with that of Dyer. Under pressure from the Secretary of State for War Winston Churchill, the Army Council recommended that Dyer not receive further employment or promotion, but elected not to publicly endorse compulsory retirement. After relinquishing his position as DCIGS to General Philip Chetwood in 1920, Harington assumed command of the Army of the Black Sea, organized to occupy parts of Turkey and later used to enforce a neutral zone established by the nominal signing of the Treaty of Chevreuse during the Greco-Turkish War. Succeeding General Milne, Harington had under his command the British 28th Division at Istanbul, a Greek division at Izmit, and a Greek regiment at Bykos. Additional contingents supplied by the French and Italian militaries, under General Sharpie and General Mombelli respectively, were subordinated to Harington when he became CNC Allied occupation forces in Turkey. In 1921, the Greek army in Anatolia initiated an offensive against Mustafa Kemal's forces and maintained their advance with the intent of capturing Angora. Some 50,000 Greeks were redeployed to eastern Thrace, threatening Istanbul. Harington later recalled in his memoir that during a social event Turkish officials offered some 20,000 of its soldiers to defend the city, less than 1 year before the Chanak crisis that prompted Greece to offer the assistance of 20,000 of its troops. Harington also became General Officer Commanding Northern Command in 1923, General Officer Commanding Western Command in 1927 and General Officer Commanding Aldershot Command in 1931 before becoming Governor of Gibraltar, in 1933 during the Spanish Civil War. With his former commander, Plumer, Harington attended the unveiling of the Menin Gate on 24 July 1927. Harington published 2 memoirs, Plumer of Messine and his autobiography, Tim Harington Looks Back. He died following his retirement in Cheltenham, England.